welcome to this explainer. Right off the bat, we're going to fundamentally shift how you look at success, empathy, and leadership in today's workplace. We're drawing on some absolutely phenomenal source material here that breaks down what it actually means to be a real leader. Not just a boss, right? But someone who actually inspires the people around them. We're going to cover the whole shebang, from how you manage your own personal energy to how you treat the person sitting right next to you, all the way to the profound impact of empathy in this super distracted world we live in. All right, let's just dive right into it.
Consider this classic story about a run in Central Park. So after a weekend race hosted by a local running group, a sponsor set up a tent giving away free bagels. On one side of the picnic tables, you've got these boxes of delicious, fresh bagels. But on the other side, a massive, winding line of tired runners waiting to get one. The storyteller turns to his friend and says, "Hey, let's get a bagel." His friend just looks at the line and goes, "The line's way too long." He pushes back, "But free bagel?" But the friend literally couldn't get past it. "I don't want to wait in line." In that tiny little interaction, a massive truth about human nature was revealed. There are basically two totally distinct ways people look at the world and their goals.
And that brings us to Section 1, the individual mindset. Because before we can even think about leading other people, we have to understand our own internal drive.
What's so wild about this contrast is you have the friend who could only see the obstacle, right? That giant, annoying line. But then you have the other perspective where the speaker could only see the goal, the bagel. So what did he do? He just bypassed the line entirely, leaned right in between two people at the table, and pulled out two bagels. Simple as that. The fundamental rule here is that you can break the rules and go after exactly what you want as long as you don't deny anyone else the ability to go after what they want. You don't have to wait in line. You definitely don't have to do it the way everybody else has always done it.
Now, personal drive isn't just about grabbing the bagel. It's also about endurance. Let me tell you the story of the two lumberjacks. Every single morning, these two guys start chopping wood at the exact same time, and every evening, they stop at the exact same time. But day after day, one of the lumberjacks just disappears for about an hour right in the middle of the day, and yet, somehow, that same guy ends up chopping more wood than the other one. Finally, the exhausted worker who's been grinding continuously all day just throws his hands up and asks, "Okay, every day you disappear for an hour, and every day you chop more wood than me. Where do you go for that hour?"
The other lumberjack just looks up and delivers this brilliant punchline. "Oh, I go home and sharpen my axe." I mean, wow, that perfectly captures what we call the infinite mindset. Success isn't just about how much you can blindly grind out in a single Tuesday, it's about how much you can achieve over the course of a lifetime or a decades-long career. And to do that, you have to step away to recharge. You literally have to take vacations, shut off your email, totally disconnect from the office, and sharpen your axe. Moving right along to Section 2, the core of teamwork. Let's see how this mindset translates into how we interact with others, and maybe completely subvert what you think it means to be tough.
So a Navy SEAL was once asked what kind of person makes it through their infamously brutal selection process. He couldn't pinpoint the exact success profile, but he knew exactly who fails. The guys who show up with the huge, bulging muscles, covered in tattoos, trying to prove to everyone just how incredibly tough they are, they don't make it. The leaders who love to delegate responsibility and never actually get their own hands dirty, they fail too. Even the star college athletes who've just never been pushed to the absolute core of their being, none of them make it through.
So who does succeed? Honestly, some of the guys who make it are skinny and scrawny. Some are literally shivering out of fear. But what unites every single one of them is this underlying truth. When they are physically and emotionally spent, when there is absolutely nothing left in the tank, they somehow dig down deep inside themselves and find the energy to help the person to their left and right. The world is just far too dangerous and difficult to tackle all on your own. Being an elite warrior isn't about your individual speed or how much you can lift. It's about learning to ask for help and, crucially, being the one who helps those around you.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, traits of great leaders. Let's look at the specific, actionable behaviors that actually separate everyday managers from truly great historical leaders.
Take Nelson Mandela, universally regarded as a great leader, right? Well, when he was asked how he learned his leadership skills, he credited his father, who was a tribal chief. When his dad met with other elders, he followed two really distinct rules. First, they always sat in a circle. Second, his father was always the last to speak. You know, we are constantly told to learn to listen, but learning to be the last to speak, that takes it a massive step further. If you can just hold your opinion, not even nod yes or no, and just ask questions, two magical things happen. One, everyone else feels genuinely heard, and two, you get the massive advantage of hearing everyone else's thoughts before you render your own decision.
Now let's look at another leadership trait, highlighted by a pretty dark chapter in medical history, 70%. In the 18th and mid-19th centuries, something called purple fever, or the Black Death of childbed, was absolutely ravaging hospitals across Europe and America. Women were dying within 48 hours of giving birth, and in some hospitals the mortality rate was a staggering 70%.
The doctors, these supposedly brilliant men of empirical science, were desperately studying corpses in the morning trying to figure out the cause, and then going straight to the maternity ward to deliver babies in the afternoon. It wasn't until Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes pointed out the terrifying truth. The doctors weren't washing their hands. He essentially stood up and told them, "Guys, you are the problem." And you know what they did? They called him crazy and ignored him for 30 years. But when they finally started sterilizing their instruments and washing their hands, the disease basically vanished. The absolutely crucial point here is this. True leadership requires accountability. You can take all the credit in the world for what goes right, but only if you take absolute responsibility for what goes wrong. Sometimes you are the problem.
And part of that accountability is keeping your ego in check and knowing your place. Let me share this great story about a former Undersecretary of Defense. One year, while he was still in office, he flew business class to a conference, was chauffeured to his hotel, and right before his speech, someone handed him a coffee in this beautiful ceramic cup. Fast forward to the next year, he's no longer in the role. He flew coach, took a taxi, checked himself into the hotel, and had to pour his own coffee into a styrofoam cup from a dingy machine in the corner. His realization? The ceramic cup was never actually meant for him. It was meant for his position. He only ever deserved a styrofoam cup. Look, as you gain success, people are going to give you perks. Enjoy them, for sure, but maintain your humility. Remember, the perks are for the rank, not the person.
All right, Section 4, the modern empathy crisis. Let's completely shift our tone here and look at the actual environment we are trying to apply these leadership traits to today.
We are living in a Facebook and Instagram world where everything is meticulously filtered to look absolutely perfect. But beneath all that, there's a huge crisis, and it's fueled by dopamine. Constant engagement with social media and cell phones releases this highly addictive chemical in our brains. It's literally the exact same chemical released when people smoke or drink. And we've basically given an entire generation unfettered access to this numbing agent right during the high stress of adolescence. As a result, we're seeing people grow up with much lower self-esteem, superficial friendships, and a severe lack of coping mechanisms. When hard times hit, instead of turning to a human being for support, they turn to a device.
When younger workers enter the corporate world and inevitably struggle, older generations love to blame them. But the source material here really challenges that, pointing out that, hey, we built this environment. This brilliantly illustrates the real heavy lifting of a modern leader: empathy. Empathy means looking at a struggling generation and asking, maybe it's us. Maybe it's this incredibly intense environment we've created. Instead of treating employees like a wet towel that you just wring out for maximum performance, leaders have got to practice real empathy. We need to create environments where human beings feel genuinely cared for and safe enough to actually be at their natural best.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, passion versus stress. When we combine all this, the personal drive, the teamwork, the humility, and the empathy, what is the ultimate destination we are actually trying to reach?
Here it is. Loving your job is a God-given right. It is not a privilege. It shouldn't be treated like you just won the lottery, where your friends gasp in total shock when you tell them you actually like going to work. No, it is a fundamental demand that we must make of our leaders. We have to demand environments where we feel totally safe to express our vulnerabilities, where feedback is given to build us up rather than break us down, and where our leaders care way more about our joy and our growth than they do about some short-term quarterly number.
Because here's the magic. When we feel that safety and that genuine care, we respond in kind. We will gladly offer our blood, sweat, and tears to advance the company's vision, because suddenly it becomes deeply personal to us. It really all boils down to this one incredible distinction. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. But working hard for something we love, that is called passion. That is the fundamental difference that true leadership makes in all of our lives.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a real question to chew on. Take a hard look at your own life, your own teams, and your own impact as a leader. Ask yourself, are you creating an environment of stress, or are you creating an environment of passion? Thank you so much for joining me to explore these absolutely powerful insights. I really hope this leaves you eager to go out, sharpen your axe, and lead with some true empathy.